All right. So Erik Templin, how are you, man? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Spencer.
This is a pleasure, and I genuinely mean that. I think you and I will get into our history and the background, and to get a chance to sit down with the guy that taught me Selffunded and obviously started this 8-9 year journey now that has culminated in a podcast about self-funding.
I don't know if I
this is an honor.
I helped enable, but
you facilitated the introduction to it, whatever you want to call it, man. But it's really a pleasure. Appreciate you joining me on the show, and I'm excited about our conversation.
I'm grateful to be here. It's been a lot of fun, Spencer, to see how this has grown and all the followers you have and some of the great guests you have. So I'm honored to be a part of it today.
Well, you're going to be one of the top ones, man.
Okay.
I'll tell you that in advance. But so I know we're obviously going to talk about Selffunded. We'll talk about Hayes Companies / Brown & Brown. We'll talk about strategy, all the cool stuff, the kind of the meat of the conversation. But I think to start, my favorite thing to do to set the tone for the podcast is let's humanize the person that I'm sitting across from.
Yeah.
Let's learn about you, some of your backstory, your work history, family life, anything you want to share. We'd love to kind of hear who Erik Templin is before we get into Selffunding.
Yeah. Well, that could take a while.
That's fine. Well, I've allocated 10 minutes like you saw, so let's do it.
Yeah, just a little bit about me personally. I am the father of 4 children. I've been married for almost 21 years now.
Has it really been?
Yeah. I tell everyone I got married when I was 16.
Yeah.
So, no, but I've got 4 beautiful children. I've got 3 teenagers.
I know. When you told me that, I anticipated it's been longer than I thought, but I couldn't imagine. Yeah, I remember when they were very little. So teenagers now, 3 teenagers.
3 teenagers, a senior in high school, preparing for college, a junior, a 7th grader, and our little guy Ty is in 1st grade.
But he's not so little anymore. He was 7 years old. You said
he's 8. He's 8.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. I remember baby Ty. So that's how long we've known each other.
Yep,
that's fun to watch it grow. And you've always been a great family man, a great example. So as somebody from afar watching that, appreciate what you've done in that regard.
No, I appreciate it, and I think the reason I start with that is because that's kind of the real joy of my life. I mean, I love what I do professionally, but you find real joy, purpose, and happiness, with your loved ones and your family. So I've got an awesome family, wonderful children, and that's where it all starts.
Cool. Well, so that's you, the family, right? Erik, the family man. And I think I knew that you would always prioritize the family, even over all your accomplishments in your career. But let's learn about kind of where you grew up, where you got started in this industry. Like, what's this journey been like for you to get to where you are today?
Yeah. So, there's just a long story there, right? But I did grow up in Texas. Primarily through grade school, was over in Europe for a few years, and then went to school at Brigham Young University in Utah. Shortly at that time when I was at Brigham Young University, I actually started almost like an internship. It was a part-time position for a company called Ingenix.
Okay.
And Ingenix was a subsidiary of United Healthcare.
Okay.
They are now called Optum Insight, I believe. So I started there as just this kind of intern sales assistant, working with the team, was still going to school, married at the time. And that's where I was kind of introduced to, self-funding, right? So
really, as on an internship job, almost you were introduced to self-funding that early. That's really cool. So what was it like when you say self-funding back then? What were we talking about?
What was interesting is, so at Ingenix, we license data to carriers and providers, and they use that to set their fee schedules or what they're going to reimburse.
Okay.
But then I also was responsible for renewing our claims editing software, CES. And so claims editing software, we would license that to unions, Taft-Hartley plans, and they were basically self-funding their plans. They had indemnity networks. There was, no BUCA network associated with it. And they used our usual and customary data to set what they were going to reimburse. And then they just processed and paid their own claims. Now that's a long time ago, right? I mean, with where healthcare has gone, you can't just pay any claim, these days. So that dynamic has changed. But that's where I was introduced to, I guess, the term self-funding, and it really, really intrigued me. And then that morphed into ultimately having an individual approach me and ask me to come work for his brokerage. It was a smaller brokerage called Intermountain Benefit Administrators. Okay. That was purchased by another company and another company that eventually became Meritain Health.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And became Meritain. And so, we were kind of a broker's broker. And then at Meritain was promoting Meritain services, but I did that for just a short period of time. I realized very quickly that I wanted to be a consultant. Okay. And I wanted to bring other options and solutions, the best of what we have out there to our clients. And so that was going to be limited in doing that, just an individual carrier or third-party administrator.
Yeah. Were you in the Denver market at the time?
I was.
Yeah, that's what I thought. What brought you to Denver? Was it that particular job?
It was that position. Yeah.
So you were calling on brokers just like, I've been doing for the number of years and selling the TPA services or...
Yeah, so it really started, we were a broker's broker. And we worked with groups about 50 to 500, and we were the self-funded specialist.
Okay.
So we built these employee benefit plans, and I spent a lot of my time going out to rural Nebraska and Kansas and Wyoming and the Western Slope out in Western Colorado. A lot of cities, school districts. Great people, loved it, but we were somewhat limited in what we were doing. And then we became Meritain Health. That model changed.
Okay.
Where we weren't necessarily working with the brokers. We were now, we weren't a broker anymore. We were now a third-party administrator, and I was a carrier rep.
Okay.
And Meritain was great organization. Just felt that there was more for me, and felt that I wanted to bring other solutions and kind of like a physician. A physician can prescribe all these different types of medications, right? I wanted to be able to prescribe a lot of different medications, and I'd be very limited at one.
Well, and so I've been in that world. Obviously, I've been in the carrier world. I completely understand, right? You feel you can do one thing, and hopefully you can do that one thing really well, but then you start to have to do that one thing kind of over and over and over again, and you start going, well, what else can I do? I'm limited because I sell one carrier's product or I sell one single solution. And if you have aspirations to do a little bit more versatile style solution-based work, then that you start going, okay, maybe this isn't the world for me as well. And some people do it for a long period of time and they do fantastic at it, and they're happy just being masters of that particular domain. But I was just thinking, well, I also want to diversify the things that I know and understand. And I think that also comes back from the origins, and when we'll talk about when I started learning Selffunded under your wing, is there's more than just stop loss. Even though I love stop loss to death, there's so much more than that, and that's what makes it exciting. So at Meritain, of course, you got a little bit more, I guess, aware of what is possible in the consulting world. So is that what led you to Hayes? Was the next stop?
That's exactly what led me to Hayes. So I made the decision that I wanted to, be a consultant. We say brokerages, we're consultants. We're out there finding solutions for employers, and that's what I wanted to do. So I interviewed with a number of different brokerages, and Hayes was where I went in late 2008.
So at that time I know what you did obviously when you came down to Texas, but at that time in that marketplace, were you having the same type of conversations around self-funding that you did here? Or was it a little bit different?
With Hayes and the Denver market, there's a lot of small to mid-market employers, very similar demographic that I was working at Meritain. Of course, I had a non-compete and wasn't going after any of those former clients. So I basically was picking up the phone, making calls. I was a producer and had to go out there and find my own prospects. And so was very, very fortunate with the help of some wonderful mentors there, Joe Long, Eric Rosales, who are still with Brown & Brown today. They were wonderful mentors to me, and I was able to build a very successful book of business there, which ultimately allowed me the opportunity to come down here to Texas, where I grew up, and open an office for Hayes Companies back in 2011.
Yeah, so when they initially approached you about the idea, I'm sure it was exciting, probably a little bit, nerve-wracking thinking of opening an office on your own. Knowing you, though, I'm sure you dove in headfirst to do that.
Well, it was actually me that approached them.
What, really? Oh, that makes even more sense now. Okay.
Yeah, so I approached them, and I love what we were doing in Denver, but I felt that there were some other things we could be doing, and I didn't want to. The organization was great. I loved who I was working with. I didn't want to compete, against them. I felt this would be the best opportunity. And my goodness, here we are. Hayes, a top 20 broker in the country, and we don't have an office in Texas. I'm sitting here thinking, Texas, that's 10% of the population of the United States.
Yeah,
we should have an office in Texas. And so once I put my mind to it, and I put together a business plan, they're like, well, what do we have to lose? And I guess the rest was history. So.
Yeah, and so what was that, 2010 maybe?
That was 2011.
Okay.
So August of 2011, moved down here, and then we officially opened our doors, if you will, January of 2012.
Okay, and so January 2012.
10 years ago.
Was it? Wow, yeah,
Yeah,
it was
right
10
at
years
10.
ago. The decade.
Yeah.
How happy 10-year anniversary
you.
of starting the office. So was it just you by yourself at the time, or I forget who?
So it was me for a handful of months.
Okay.
You know, I had clients that I was renewing in Denver.
Okay.
I remember having 17. These are all, you know, mid-market employers, but 17 January 1st renewals, and I was very involved with renewing those clients. And Dale Brickert joined me the end of November of 2011.
Okay.
And so then we started just, I guess, putting the rest of the business plan together and, you know, getting ready for 2012. And, you know, just some of the various strategies that I felt would be very effective down here.
Yeah.
And so we started to build that out and then started, I guess, peddling services and making phone calls and putting together seminars and events starting January of 12.
So you guys were doing seminars all the way back then?
Oh, yeah, that's how we started.
Was it really? Okay.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I guess over the years in this industry and even very early on, I learned that, you know, strategy defines cost.
Okay.
Strategy defines cost. It's not so much yes, there's self-funding. We know that there's savings there. I mean, I worked with, you know, Great West. And we had that level funded product. It worked with fully insured products, but there's a strategy that defines the cost. And so, you know, with that in mind, I wanted to educate the market on strategy, and felt that if we took the approach of educating versus selling, educating them on self-funding, educating them on opportunities that they could, you know, improve the overall cost of their healthcare, that would be the approach that we would take. So with that premise in mind, that's the approach that we took with events that we started. I say events. I don't like using the word seminars because you hear seminars and no one wants to come to a seminar.
Yeah,
right?
you think like what is a motivational speaker or something like that. But,
So
so seminar maybe not the right terminology.
Educational event.
Well, and that's exactly what they were. And so we were talking off the podcast, but that's when I obviously was coming over to join Hayes myself. And in the interim of that 2-week notice that I put in with Benefit Mall, you invited me to a seminar.
That's right.
And I don't. Maybe my mind wasn't
that
blown. That got me hooked, though. To say that my mind was blown, it was kind of like almost sudden this part of insurance that I didn't know existed. The world was opened up to me, and so I remember going back and talking to some of my colleagues in the finance department and telling them, "Hey guys, have you heard of the self-funding stuff?" And I could barely articulate what it was at the time, but I knew enough to go, "That's cool. That it combines numbers. It combines strategy. There's an art to it, which I kind of like, how to put it all together."
Yeah.
And so the mixture of kind of who I am or who I aspired to be, it combined a lot of those elements. And as you can see, obviously, I got hooked on it.
That's great.
Pretty severely, but you were a big part of that. And so I learned under your tutelage, of course, which was really fun. But just sinking in, it took me 3 to 6 months, I would say, to really fully grasp, right? You get terminology here and there, but then once you started to see, well, this part moves over here, and this is how you put it together, and then this is what a plan looks like, and you go, oh, you know, that's when the light bulb, it took about 6 months, and then you get it, right? And then you feel like you're comfortable talking about it. Did you have a similar kind of ramping up period?
I think for me, it was, you know, with a self-funded plan, you design your plan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you design what's best for your organization, for your employees, for your team, so you put that strategy in place. Whereas in the fully insured world, you know, you've got so many plans to choose from, and that's it, right? And so, as I saw employers implementing these plans that you couldn't get from a fully insured carrier, having success, lowering costs, again, a different strategy created a different cost curve.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, this is great.
Yeah.
Now, could I start working with larger employers that are larger than 50, 100? You know, a lot of our clients were 50 to a couple hundred employees, and we were doing partially self-funding.
Yeah.
You know, but felt that I could do that on a larger scale. Texas obviously is a really large market. Mm-hmm. A lot of big employers down here. I mean, an employer with 1,000 employees is a dime a dozen, mm-hmm. right? So that was part of the intrigue to take what we were doing with smaller employers. Mm-hmm. And do that on a much larger scale.
So I was going to ask you that question, but I assume I already kind of know the answer. I feel like the marketplace was likely very receptive to the strategy. Did you feel, though, you were still having different conversations with employers than maybe their current brokers were having? Did that play into your ability to win business early on?
Yeah, you know, I think one of the things that really benefited us is, I mentioned education, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're educating on what's really driving costs. And costs aren't necessarily driven just by the plans that you offer. It's not driven by the number of plans or which carrier you're with. we say the strategy, it's the plan design itself, the contribution, and then who enrolls or doesn't enroll in your plan. And so as we started to have those conversations with employers about, look, you have this large waiver population that's not electing the plan. Look how you've designed your plan where you've inherently invited more risk on your plan, thus putting you on a higher cost curve. So as we started talking about those things, not just adding an HSA plan, putting in a wellness program, we weren't talking about that, but rather let's talk about the structure of how you've designed your plan and your contributions to either invite or not invite certain individuals, employees and dependents to enroll in your plan. And that was a very different concept, for employers down here. I think even today,
I still think it's it's not like I hear that discussion prevalent. And I talk to a lot of brokers. I'm sure some other folks are doing their own spin version of that. But to me, that was one of the things that I really latched onto is like, there's a behavioral element of this.
That's right.
What does human behavior look like? What does it look like when presented with multiple choices? Who's going to choose what? And how does that impact the cost of the plan? Some of it takes a leap of faith to go, I believe this will work. Yeah. Now let's go test it for 2 or 3 years to ensure that it is working, and then we can prove it. So I'm sure there was somewhat of a leap of faith with some of those employers early on that I get it, I trust you, and let's go do it. But once it started working, and maybe you saw it work prior to the move to Texas, did you feel like this sense of, okay, now we're here, now we planted our flag, and we can replicate this and repeat this process?
It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy.
I don't doubt it wasn't easy.
It took a while. But what's really benefited us over the past, 7 or 8 years now is having case studies, having employers who have had a lot of success. And it starts with, your plan design, your contributions, as we refer to risk pool management, right? That's where it starts, but there's so much more beyond that. I'm very much concerned about, which carrier, networks, what strategies, population health management programs that these employers our clients are utilizing. But we're going to do that after we first address who's enrolling in the plan. And so again, that was just a very, very different concept for employers. It made a lot of sense to them. I think a lot of them did take a leap of faith, that or we just begged for their business.
Hey, whatever you have to do early on. I get it though, but it's because it was such a unique, I think, subject, and because it was such a completely different way to look at how to attack claim spend. That's why I think it worked, and that's why I obviously gravitated towards it. And I've got to do some of the reporting and put the pieces together to show a little bit of the ROI. But to me, there's a lot more than you can do in the space than shop carriers or change TPAs or my network has this discount versus this discount. You're really treating symptoms. You're not really treating the drivers of the cost. And so that's what I'm fascinated in. Is like, what is this human being doing to potentially make choices that implement or that cost the entire plan more money?
And that's exactly right. So before $1 is incurred on the health plan, someone made a choice to either enroll or not enroll. And then based on the design that you have in place, they make a choice of how they're going to utilize it. So, we talk about utilization drives cost. Yeah, utilization drives cost, but it starts with choices of how individuals use it or whether, again, they're even enrolled in your plan. And so that's really where we start the conversation. And it's the same message that we had, 10 years ago. We've just now taken it to the next level with a lot of experience, great case studies. And we've got great partners and vendors and, now part of Brown & Brown, even a greater network of, options and strategies that we can bring our clients. So it's been a fun ride.
Well, so you don't necessarily have to radically change your strategy just because it's been going on for a certain period of time. Just like us, you're always fine-tuning. We use the term evergreen in software.
That's right.
You're always fine-tuning. You're always adapting to new variables that are presented, but the core function of what you do remains the same.
That's right.
But I think you always, knowing you as a leader, you're always thinking ahead of the next 2 or 3 years down the line and what's going to come up and how do we position ourselves to be prepared for changes in the market looking ahead. I want to shift gears a little bit if you don't mind, because I got my first exposure to sales coming on renewal meetings and prospect meetings with you. And so I want to talk.
You probably came on a few sales meetings too, I'm sure, didn't you?
Not prior to, never been. I was in the finance and QA team. I was hunkered away in a little cubicle or an office for my time there. So really that was the introduction. That was part of the choice to come over, right, as being more customer facing. And I was attracted to that. But I watched kind of that sales process play out for you and got to witness some of the techniques and the way they ask questions. Where did your sales experience come from? Can you talk about how you got how you develop those skills, because they're clearly you have them. So where did they come from?
Well, I think number one, you just recognize that people are people, and that they've got to like the individual that's sitting across the table from them. And so I think that's the approach that I've always tried to take is we got to be likable, and I've got to be me. We have to be us, right? We can't try to be something that we're not. I really learned that. I think I mentioned I was, I don't know if I mentioned or not, but I was over in Europe for a couple of years. So I was a missionary for our church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I was over in Switzerland and Germany and Austria for 2 years from the age of 19 to 21. Okay. I learned German. I learned Swiss German. You go there for 2 years and you don't date. You call home a couple times a year. Okay. And you knock a lot of doors, but you do a lot of service for individuals. Okay. But I was speaking to individuals who, were 15 years old to 100 years old, right? And doing a lot of teaching, and then teaching in another language as well. And so I think for me, that experience was so valuable that I've never had any fear of speaking to anyone. I've always, because of that, realized that we had the most success as missionaries when we're just ourselves, and we didn't try to, fluff anything and just kind of said it how it is. And that's the same approach that we take in the sales process is ask questions, understand really, what an employer's challenges are, and not have this standard PowerPoint deck that we're going to present to them.
And talk at them.
Talk. It's just let the conversation go where it's going to go. So, a typical meeting would be asking some questions, and then, okay, well, I heard two things. I heard this and I heard this. Well, how about we address those two items? We'll do a little free consulting today. It might be a first meeting is like that. And that's it. And we're not even really talking about who we are as an organization. Maybe they came to one of our educational events. Maybe we did call them and ask if we could present our services. But we're just addressing some of their concerns. And then they get I guess, a vision of what it would be like working with us, because we're consulting from the very first sales meeting. Yeah. And we're never selling, we're consulting and educating. And so that's what I attribute a lot of the success to is educating versus selling. And the minute you start selling them, they feel it. They feel it, and then you're not as likable.
Well, because you feel it when you're being sold too.
Totally,
my guard goes up the second I feel somebody selling me something. It doesn't matter if I need it or not. As soon as I get the sense I'm being sold to, I don't want what you're selling me. And so I agree with you completely. The consultative, the listening, the educational approach is something I've always tried to infuse into what I do. Because when you get sold to, you don't want it, even if it's going to be a great solution for you. And people tend to be less receptive and stop listening at the same time. And that's one thing I did learn from you is the asking of questions. Which kind of why now I ask questions all the time. But I felt that you could learn a lot more about what they need. You can learn a lot more about their problems. You could also, you make them feel important, right? Because you're talking to them and you're listening to what they have to say. And then, of course, you pick up on things that are important that they're saying that you can discuss. But they end up being really the center of attention, if you will. And I think a lot of people, of course, like that as well. But they don't feel like, oh, I left and that guy talked at me for an hour and I have no idea what he did and I didn't really like him, like you said, and I'm never going to answer his phone call.
Well, yeah, and I think the other thing that approach breeds is again, we talked about the likability factor, right? I think that's such a huge thing. You have to like who's sitting across the table from you, especially as a broker consultant. So I think that they feel that, okay, this person didn't come in and sell me at all. But the other piece to that is they just get to know what it would be like working with us. And I just think that makes a difference. We typically over the years, now it's been different the last couple of years, not being in person for as many meetings with employers. We would use iPads, and we use these iPads. And again, there's no preconceived presentation. We got a lot of different documents out there, and wherever the conversation goes, then we address it. And when you walk out of a first meeting or a second meeting with an employer, and they see you didn't have a canned presentation, you listened, and then you addressed those items, and that's all you did. Then it just moves that process forward so much quicker. So I felt like that really helped spur a lot of our success. Our approach, even today, is, if we don't do our job, let us go. So we got to come in, we got to prove ourselves. And that's been a big part of our success, is doing free consulting, doing analysis, I guess demonstrating what the opportunity could be, and hey, give us a shot. If we don't do our job, then let us go. And fortunately, we've been able to do our job very well, and we've got a lot of great clients.
Well, see, that's why you position yourself, and I've heard this term a number of times over the years, you lose business the way you win it, right? And if you're winning because your ideas are better, you're consulting in a better manner. Well, if you lose because of that, which is probably a much rarer occasion that somebody out-consults you, then you can, maybe it's easier to accept than, hey, so-and-so took me to a nicer baseball game or a better golf course or something to that effect. Then you go, okay, well, that's,
we can do those things too.
You can do those things too, but those are the that's the low-hanging fruit, right? Anybody can do that type of stuff.
It is, and I don't think that's what employers are looking for. They're looking for a broker, a consultant to come in and challenge them, challenge their thinking. And it's challenging their thinking that really piques their interest and really gets them engaged with you. And then they get excited about the analysis and excited about what you're going to deliver to them. And so, they want to be challenged. And yeah, it's important to have, good relationship and go to a Mavs game or do some of these things. But that's not how we built our business here. We built our business in challenging the status quo, challenging what maybe other brokers or consultants were doing, challenging what the carriers and the marketplace is doing. And that was refreshing to employers. It's still refreshing to employers today. And then self-funding, of course, being a huge component of that, because that is the vehicle to allow you to have be able to employ this strategy, right? Because you can design whatever you want.
Yeah, the control, right? And I think that's one thing that I gravitated to so much is, I can shop, not to pick on the names, but I can shop a Blue Cross or I can shop a UHC or a Cigna fully insured plan. I can maybe move a deductible or copay around and shift costs here or there or shift it over to my employees. But you haven't really solved anything. It's a shell game a little bit. But then you look at self-funding and the levers that you can pull there. It's like you open up a toolkit and there's 1,000 tools in there instead of one. And that's what I loved about it, is like it could literally everything that you do strategy-wise could be adapted to that individual's employer's needs, and you have a toolkit that's able to service that specific subset of needs.
That's right. That's right. And I think, as I call myself a self-funded expert. I mean, had a lot of experience.
Call you a self-funded expert.
A lot of experience over the years, but it's tough work. It'd be really easy just to prescribe. As a physician goes out and prescribes a generic medication, right? A Z-Pak every day for every single, different infection. But there's a lot of other different medications out there. And so, we're physicians in that we have to know everything, but very specialized. And when you're a specialist in self-funding, it's hard. It's a lot more work. It'd be easier just to put fully insured plans on the table or level funded plans all day long. Those are very, very simple. And so I think it's important to recognize that self-funding is not easy. Not anyone can do it. And you've got to have an employer that is really willing to make changes and really open to other strategies. Because again, if you were to move to a self-funded plan with the exact same plan you have today, you might get a little better results, but you've got to change that strategy. It's a strategy that defines cost. And I say that over and over and over again.
Well, I'm going to leave here and have that repeating in my head. I like it though. The strategy defines cost. But I'm with you there. And I noticed it, especially when I was back in the stop loss world, where people would fixate so much on 2 or 3% of premium.
Goodness.
Well, 2 or 3% of premium was maybe 8 to 10% of the total plan spend, and you've got this entire piece of the pie over here that you've completely ignored, and all you can do is really shop the stop loss carriers and benchmark them against each other to compete. That again, that's a symptom treatment rather than
it's a necessary evil.
Yeah,
but
that can be a part of it without being your sole strategy, right? And so getting people to wrap their heads around, like, what about that 60% of your cost that's coming from claims that is addressable by behavioral change or by strategy?
That's right.
Focus on that, and the other part of that will come along. The premium is simply a function of the risk itself.
It is.
Yeah, and so fix the risk, the premium will follow suit.
And what's the main part of the premium? The claims. The claims drives the premium. So, when you look at most of the large group plans we work with, it's probably closer to 80 to 95% of their total plan cost is claims. We've got some clients that it's 1% is their fixed cost, and 99% is claims. And so that's where you want to focus your time. That's where we've tried to focus our time. And again, we want to get competitive stop loss, we want to get competitive administration, but it's employing the right strategy to control claims costs is really where the opportunity is for any self-funded employer.
And so how is, and I obviously know you from Hayes. You were really instrumental in helping build out this office. But talk to me about the transition. You said it's been since November 18 now, Brown & Brown acquisition. And now I'm getting used to you being a Brown & Brown employee instead.
I'm still getting used to it
You're
too.
Still, and I saw I told you a number of your team members on LinkedIn got, title changes or promotions, which I love the fact that they're rewarding your team for a successful job prior to the acquisition. But how has your life changed? How has the strategy changed? How have the resources grown? Like, tell me about that shift going up under their umbrella.
Yeah. So we were acquired by Brown & Brown in November of 2018, but we maintained the Hayes name up until a week ago.
A week ago. It's really that fresh. Okay.
So now it's officially Brown & Brown.
Okay.
We had Hayes part of the Brown & Brown team, but now officially Brown & Brown. And so, the beauty of this is Brown & Brown, we're now the fifth largest. We're the fifth largest insurance consultant in the country, sixth largest in the world. But we function, at least our office, it hasn't changed as far as how we work with our clients and the strategies that we employ. We have more resources. We've got some terrific population health resources, benefit technology resources. We've got a few vendors that we own, I guess you would say, that we're able to use with our clients. But more than anything, what I appreciate is that Brown & Brown recognizes that we were very successful at Hayes in promoting a strategy and a different way of thinking, and they want us to continue that.
Yeah.
And so really part of I think the reason for the acquisition is we had large employee benefit expertise. And Brown & Brown, again, a $3 billion organization today, at the time, I think we were not even $2 billion. So it's grown significantly even the last 3 years. But 70% of employee benefits was groups under 100 employees.
Okay.
And so they really look to us as, okay, you guys are self-funded experts. You're working with mid and large group employers. We need you. We need you in here.
Yeah.
And so it's been terrific that they have accepted our approach, our strategies, and really wanted us to integrate that across the organization. So Brown & Brown's a wonderful organization led by Pal Brown. Our head of retail is Barrett Brown. So when it says Brown & Brown, we're Brown & Brown.
Literally Brown & Brown.
Through and through,
Yeah.
So again, public organization on the New York Stock Exchange, but we don't function that way.
Yeah.
We don't function like some of the other big houses. Yeah, we're large and we have all the resources, but in the way we're kind of a mom and pop in how we treat our clients, but bring superior strategies, to the table. So it's a lot of fun that we get to continue that even with the Brown & Brown name.
Well, I'm going to be a little bit disappointed, come to the office, the new office space, and the color palette's going to be different because I know you spent a lot of time in designing that and the Hayes color. I love that your
we still have a lot of blue.
We got a lot of blue, but the color palette was very variable, and so it was nice. The aesthetics were great. But this is what the business is all about, right? The business changes. Of course, people are always interested in successful businesses that have established a brand and aggregation and acquisition, whatever you want to call it, in our spaces, and inevitability of that, especially with private equity money. But
that's right.
I imagine, though, at the end of the day, if I were to sit down as a fly on the wall in one of your meetings, it would be conducted in a very similar fashion in the way it was done 7-8 years ago.
That's right.
Same way, right? Just different name on the business card.
That's right. That's right. It really hasn't changed. Like I said, if anything, we have access to more resources, more support. Brown & Brown's very innovative in what we're doing. We've got some really exciting new innovations that are going to be coming to the market in the coming year. We're not just a broker and do a lot more than that. And so that's why I'm excited to be part of this organization. And we're flourishing and growing. I couldn't be happier that we joined Brown & Brown. You just never know. You never know what to expect, right?
Yeah.
And it's been a wonderful marriage.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. And that's a good segue into kind of the future of this business, right? Not only future, maybe some exciting things you guys are doing, but I always like to get a sense of what does the future of self-funding look like? What does the future of healthcare look like? And I'm sure you get all the time, you have point solutions or other services that you're introduced to that sound great or innovative, but what are things that are getting you excited about healthcare, or maybe being able to add to your toolkit for that strategy that you discussed so much?
Well, I mean, we're seeing technology play a huge role. In my opinion, it should have been playing a greater role years ago. But we find ourselves not just going to carriers and getting quotes, not just reviewing claims data, but it's our processes, our procedures, it's the benefit administration process that we manage. And so as I look forward for most broker consultants, that's a must. We have to be benefits technology experts. We've got to be very savvy in that area, and not just a broker who goes and gets quotes and brings them back. So that's what employers are expecting. Yeah. For us, and you and I have worked together, you at PlanSight, and I love what PlanSight is currently doing, what you've been doing, and really excited to see where you guys continue to go, because I think what you're doing is where we're going as far as to ease the administration and efficiency for brokers to better manage their clients, how they approach the markets, even to help improve pricing and cost overall. So love what you guys are doing. I really feel like that's a huge part of where we're going. The hard part, Spencer, is just the adoption. Yeah. You've got some carriers that want to adopt a process where they share this quote, it goes onto a platform and goes into a spreadsheet, and then there's others like, no, we want to send it to you and you got to manually put it in, right? And that's a way of the past. That's got to change. Love what you guys are doing, and I think that's going to be a big part of our future.
Well, I think you speak of it's the behavioral change that's always been the biggest obstacle for us. Is not necessarily does it work or is it a great idea. Is the industry going to adopt? And it's been interesting over the last couple of years. Early stages, you're really introducing them to something new, and they're very resistant, right? Or they want to, I'll do it, but reluctantly do it. Now we're seeing it kind of flipped a little bit, where the carrier market's going, hey, we think this actually is going to stick and this is going to work. So rather than us be resistant to it, how do we adapt ourselves to this new model of doing business? Because at the end of the day, they want to do what's best for their broker partners, their partners of theirs, but also they know long-term this is going to create efficiencies for us. So not just us, but there's other entities out there, of course, and there's other solutions with that similar aim. But for whatever reason, this particular space has been one of the last bastions to adapt technology. Right. And it's strange, right? Because you're looking at the process, and not, whether it's the RFP or other parts of what you guys do, why is technology so slow to be adopted in the broker industry? Maybe you have some insight there. I'd be curious. But it just seems like everybody knows and everybody agrees that it's a really labor-intensive manual thing. But then there's a reluctancy, of course, that like, do I actually want to change the way I've always been doing it?
Well, I think we as broker consultants are going to have to change. Our role, we talk about claims, especially when you're working with mid to large group employers, is to get into the claims data, to understand what's driving costs, to evaluate other solutions out there. And if we're stuck in the monotony of some basic administrative tasks that represent a very small piece of the cost, like we talked about. It could be 1%. It could be 5 or 10. That takes us away on focusing on the most important piece of the pie, which is the claims. And so we have to have better efficiencies there for us as consultants to really help our clients. And so I'm seeing it. We're progressing. It's getting better. But it's got a long ways to go.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk a little bit more broadly then. Let's talk healthcare more broadly, the industry, right? You always hear every couple of years, depending on the political whims, right, like of whether or not we adopt a single payer type style system, if that's truly the answer to this, if there's a hybrid model of some sort. From your perspective, more broadly, how is healthcare going to change in the next couple of years?
I really don't think it's going to change that much.
Okay.
We say couple years, 2 or 3, maybe 5 years or beyond. But, right now it's a fight for talent. And because it's such a fight for talent, employers want to offer richer benefits. And so our role as broker consultants to put together very competitive employee benefit packages is more important than ever. And so if anything, cost is always a factor. I don't want to try to say that cost isn't a factor. But when you look at employee benefits that's tax preferred versus just paying someone's salary, right? Employers are looking at that saying, wait a second, let's improve our benefits. We'll spend more on benefits to be able to compensate for some of these other things. So I see over the coming years that employers are going to want to continue to improve their benefits. If anything, stay more stable and not necessarily try to take more from the employee or shift costs to the employee, at least not for mid to large employers. I think we're going to have to wait till the next presidency until we really maybe have another proposal on the table, or things change. I just don't see things changing over the next couple of years very much.
Well, it seems like it's been going on ever since I've been in the industry, right? There's this talk about this, and I think they tried to implement it in Colorado, and it got, I forgot how many years ago, but they voted it down almost 2-1, some sort of public healthcare style system in Colorado. And so it seems like it's always this thing that's a couple years out, but never actually comes to fruition. I am a proponent of the private sector. I think we will solve it. I think self-funding is a big part of that, and just spreading the word and the message of that. I do want to ask you, I'd be remiss if I didn't get a chance to ask you, reference-based pricing. I don't think you and I have ever talked about this, and that is a buzzword that comes up all the time, and I know it has worked in pockets of the country, but can you give me your perspective in the Texas market, or maybe even nationally? What do you think about that?
Some good perspective, because we've taken on clients that were in RBP, arrangements. RBP, reference-based pricing, right? We use a lot of acronyms in this industry, don't we? And I will tell you, those clients that were in reference-based pricing agreements, we've actually moved them away from reference-based pricing agreements, and they're running better than they were before. And let me explain why.
I'd love to hear why.
Reference-based pricing, why does someone put reference-based pricing in place? Well, their healthcare costs are out of control. They're not doing it because they want to offer better benefits to their employees. With a reference-based pricing plan, there's a lot of challenges for employers. You've got providers that may not accept, their services. And so that's why you have ELAP and some of these other firms that are behind the scenes that help, I guess, negotiate with the providers and help prevent some of the conflict that can happen. So with that, what happens over time that we've seen with reference-based pricing is yes, the employer is going to immediately cut costs by 20% maybe, but employees don't like it. And employees many times get balance billed. Now there's obviously changes that are happening with that right now. But you see the risk pool over time, the individuals enrolled in the plan change. And you see those healthy individuals say, well, I'm paying this amount for this plan. And most of these reference-based pricing have higher deductibles, at least most of the ones that we've worked with. There could be an indemnity network. There could be other networks they're associated with. But really, let me go back to state this, that large claims drive costs. And that's the way, whether in a reference-based pricing arrangement, you're in a standard PPO or HSA, whatever arrangement it is, large claims drive cost. And that's what we really see with these reference-based pricing plans. And so as you start to lose over time, because employees are very disenfranchised with the challenges that they have. HR professionals are very disenfranchised with the administrative challenges that they have, that you start to lose some of the healthy. And so as a result, the healthcare plans are not spiraling out of control, but they're having to pass more and more of the cost onto employees. They're having to raise premiums. They're having to raise deductibles, but you still have the large claims that are driving all the costs.
Well, do you envision a way, is there a way in your mind that it actually is a good strategic play? Is there a certain circumstances
if we could somehow have full transparency with provider, pricing, and have that where employees and dependents had that in their fingertips and they knew exactly where they could go at what price, that would be a game changer. It just doesn't exist. It doesn't truly exist in a reference-based pricing arrangement. There's several that are trying to do it, but it's very challenging for all employees across the country to get the care they need. I can give you so many countless examples of employers been turned away under reference-based pricing arrangements. And then when they're coming to their employer and our plan's horrible, and then it starts to spread across the organization. And when right now, one of the most important things for these employers is to recruit and retain. Reference-based pricing, again, it's going to save the bottom line, at least that first year. But it's not necessarily lowering trend. Trend's still there, because what does a reference-based pricing do to affect the trend, the medical trend? It does nothing. It does nothing other than just maybe cut out some costs the first year. Right?
Well, it makes sense. And I love the idea, right? At least we have a reference point that is a lot more seemingly appropriate as to pricing, because the other side of that, of course, is these private contracts between providers and the payers, and nobody really knows what the bill charges will be until afterwards, and then there's a discount that's applied, which who knows where that discount is derived. I think people can at least go, all right, well, I know that Medicare is supposed to be this, and I'll add X on top of it. That makes sense to me.
It makes a lot of
sense. As a pricing mechanism.
I totally agree.
Yeah, and so I'm as somebody that's really neutral in this regard, like I want to get both sides of this. That's the tough thing about this position sometimes is you get one side and then you have to wait to ask the other side. Maybe we'll start fostering.
Well, I think the where you really get the answers is talking to the employers.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
And so you could talk to myself as a broker, you could talk to another broker that's a big proponent of reference-based pricing, and they're going to tell you, oh, it's great. And we're telling you, ooh, I mean, if we have the right tools in place, yeah, let's work with it, but we're just not finding that they're there. And so again, if strategy defines the cost, when we say strategy, I refer to the plans that you offer, what you're charging your employees, and then based on that plan design, you have different behaviors of how people choose or utilize their healthcare. That's what's really driving the cost, right? And so if that's the case, is reference-based pricing arrangements really going to get us to where we need to go to lower costs, over time? Maybe 1 year, but not over time. Okay. And so that's what we've experienced in working with our clients. Not to say they can't work. Again, I am in 100% agreement with you that it just makes sense that there's a certain price for healthcare services. Right. But there's so much power between the carriers, the providers, and a lack of transparency that we're getting more transparent, but we've got a long ways to go before we can really say it's transparent. So until we get there, I don't know that reference-based pricing can truly be a sustainable strategy for an employer. And I say sustainable, multi-year, maybe 1 or 2 years, but for some employers, that's all they need. Mm-hmm. They need to make a change. They got to save costs. They need something now. Right? And so totally understand that. And some of the clients that we've brought on, that's the position they were in. But now in this new environment, I've got to recruit and retain. And what's one of the best recruitment retention programs? Great benefits, right? Yep. And so if you can then in turn come in with a low deductible plan, free copays, lower the cost that's coming out of their paycheck, which is what we've been able to do with the plans that we've designed. That is so attractive, and it's not driving costs up. Well, how's that possible? Yeah. Well, that's what we do. Well, that's what Talk to Brown & Brown, and that's what you find out. Yeah. Well, so let's land this thing, Eric. I know we got to get you on your way, and I think we've been close to an hour or so. So what's kind of the last thing that you'd like to leave the folks with? Let's sum up our conversation today, and of course also let folks know where they can reach out and get a hold of you as well. Yeah, I think first and foremost, I really enjoy what I do. My passion, I'm sure it shows through, but I really enjoy what I do. We are helping employers save a lot of money, but also improve the health of their employee population. So I think as a broker consultant, that's one of our primary responsibilities. It's not so much just saving the employer money, cutting costs. We should be focused on improving the health. And if we can improve the health by offering better plans that make it easier to access care, which is a huge part of our strategy. We want to make it very accessible for employees and their families to access care. That is a preventative program, right? That's probably one of the best preventative programs you can have, is just making it easy for individuals to go to the doctor. So we as broker consultants need to be more cognizant of that. And I don't know that we are. We're so focused, I think, on this carrier, this vendor, this strategy. And we've got to get back to just open the doors to creating plan designs that invite individuals to go just for basic utilization. Right. That's not driving the cost, Spencer. We both know that. But you want to have a physician relationship. And that's my biggest concern, is with a lot of the plan designs that we have in place, and kind of what's been promoted over the most recent years. It's not about access to care. Yeah. It's about, hey, let's give someone some money and have this higher deductible health plan, and hopefully they go out and they're good consumers. And we just haven't seen that work. Yeah. And so. Well, that's almost acting like a deterrent to care, right? Like, don't get care, and here's all these different impediments in order to receive the most basic of care, right? And that delayed, you know what the delayed onset of care does to claims. So I appreciate that, and I think if anything, strategy drives cost will be, perhaps a little clip I cut up, I'll have to make sure that we include that in. Strategy drives cost. It does. That's right. So Eric, again, it's been a pleasure, and thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for testing out the new studio with me. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? And just as
one man and another, thanks for introducing me to Selffunded as well and starting me on this path.
No, and congratulations on this. This is phenomenal. I will continue to follow it.
Thanks, man.
I look forward to listening to future guests. And again, thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Okay. Thanks, my friend.
All right, man.
Okay.
See ya.